Hey boys and girls, we're going to continue with our next lesson in Ancient Asian Civilizations. So you need to have out this listening packet and turn to the page that has lesson 2 at the top with this city picture here. The Indus River Part 2 is what we're going to do. So you're going to listen to a read aloud like you did for the last lesson. And you're going to listen for the places that Sanjay visits in the city of Mohenjo-daro. As you hear these places, you can color in the squares or you can put a check mark. It's up to you, just to help you to follow along. So let's look and see which places he might visit. The family's courtyard, the main street of Mohenjo-daro, the potter's studio, the road to the irrigation canals, the city's granary, the harbor, willow tree, and a holy man. We have a road to the grain fields, the market, and the weaver's shop. So as you are listening to our read aloud today, as you hear these various places, I'd like you to color them or check them off. Okay, so we are going to listen to the read aloud now. So have your color pencils or crayons ready to color off those places and go ahead and listen along.
In the previous lesson, you learned about ancient India. Which mountains did you learn about in the previous read aloud? The Himalayas, right here. On which continent are these mountains found? That would be the continent of Asia. What was special about Asia? It is the largest continent in the world and it has two of the most populous countries in the world. See if you can find this continent on a map. Which river did you learn about in the previous read aloud? The Indus River, which flows out of the Himalayas and down to the Arabian Sea. What happened to the Indus when the heavy spring rains came and the snow melted from the peaks of the Himalayas? It flooded and left behind fertile soil. How did people take advantage of the rich soil near the river? They began to cultivate or grow crops like wheat, barley, dates, bananas, and other crops. How did people control the floodwaters? They built irrigation canals. How do we know there was civilization in the Indus River Valley? Archaeologists uncovered cities like Mohenjo-daro with large buildings. There was a government, everyone had a special job to do, and there was some form of writing. Remember, Mohenjo-daro was around here. Your purpose for listening today is to find out what life would have been like for a child living in Mohenjo-daro. Today we are going to travel back in time to meet a child living in Mohenjo-daro 2,500 years ago. The child's father is a grain trader, and grains are seeds from plant foods such as wheat, corn, rye, or oats. Wheat from the surrounding fields is stored in a common granary near the citadel, the safe place in the center of the city. A common granary was a building used to store grain, which was shared by everyone in the community. The father's job is to collect the grain and take it through the city gates to the bustling port by the river. Bustling means full of activity. There he will trade it for gold, copper, jade, and turquoise from distant lands. Meet Sanjay, the boy in this picture who is waiting excitedly for his father in the courtyard of his family's home. It is a special day. Sanjay has waited 9 years for his father's invitation to join him today. For what or where do you think Sanjay's father invited him? What do you think they are going to do? Sanjay can hear the bull cart rattling down the side passage now. Then he sees him, the man in the turban. That's Sanjay's father. The turban he wears is a headdress made of cloth and worn by men in this region. Hop in, son. Let's go. Sanjay nestles or settles in snugly and comfortably into the back of the wooden cart, bracing himself against its sides, as his father guides the bull out into the main street. He has bathed and put on fresh cotton clothes, for Father has promised that after the morning's work he will be allowed to join the priests in a special ceremony giving thanks to the mighty Indus River for all that she provides. Is this the special invitation Sanjay has waited 9 years to hear? As the cart jostles Sanjay about with each turn on the road, his thoughts travel back to last spring when steady rains flooded the river, forcefully breaking the city walls and toppling buildings in its wake. Sanjay remembers it as if it were yesterday, the awful smell of the wet mud that filled his home as he and his sister waded knee-deep in muck, waiting for the muddy waters to recede or move back and away from the city. Where do you think the water goes after a flood? Sanjay knows from experience that the river has the power to destroy things in its path, and yet he knows too that the river is the source of life in the valley. The word source means a start or cause of something. Without it, there would be no crops for food, no cotton for clothing, and no means of easily transporting goods over long distances. Sanjay's thoughts are interrupted by the sudden jolt of the cart as it takes its place behind other traders lined up in front of the city granary. Enormous terracotta pots filled with grain are hoisted into the cart and set down beside him. Sanjay wonders how the wooden wheels beneath him can carry so much weight. And terracotta is a brownish-orange clay that was often used by ancient civilizations to make pottery, like right here. Turning to face forward in the cart, Sanjay sits on his knees, straining to see over the approaching city gates to the sailing ships beyond. As the cart sways to and fro from the weight of the pots, Sanjay's father struggles to edge his way through the throng or crowd of bull carts, all heading toward the loud and lively sounds of the harbor. What do you see in this picture? Once there, Father exchanges his grain for copper from Mesopotamia, hoping to sell it to the jewelry maker for a good price. The sun is directly overhead now, midday. As Father steers the bulls away from the bustling port and comes to a standstill beneath the shade of a willow tree, Sanjay's heart skips a beat. Stepping down and leading into Father's side, Sanjay walks with him toward the grove of banyan trees. Gathered among cows and men, Sanjay's eye is drawn to the holy man seated on bare ground in a cross-legged position, head bent in silence. A holy man is a person dedicated to the service of his religion. Bowing his head, Sanjay listens to the words that have comforted his people for many years. O great river, mother of people, provider of life, we thank you. It is now 6 moon cycles since your banks last flooded. We pray that we may please you and be spared from future harm. Your waters give us life. To you we owe our lives. Accept our blessings, great river. A squeeze from Father's hand lets Sanjay know that he is proud to bring his son to the sacred spot for the first time. Sanjay answers his squeeze with one of his own, whispering his thanks for this day. What river are they talking about? The Indus River.
Okay, boys and girls, so now that we've listened to the read aloud and learned more about the city of Mohenjo-daro and Sanjay, we're going to talk about the early Indian civilization and what makes a civilization a civilization. So in your knowledge book, this one with the 6 pictures on the front, you're going to open to page 37. It looks just like this, and it says Early Indian Civilization. Okay, on here, if you need to pause, you can. On here you have 5 components that make a civilization a civilization. So there's 5 things that have to happen in order for a group of people to be considered a civilization. So we have cities. They have to have cities. They have to have jobs of some sort, and generally jobs that are a few different types of jobs, not just one type of job. They generally have leaders, kings or chiefs, writing. In order for a group to be considered a civilization, there must be some form of writing and also a form of religion. So we're going to talk very quickly about the different components of the early Indian civilizations. So on the next page, after this, the very next page looks like this, and it has some pictures on it. It's page 39. I'd like you to carefully tear out page 39, and you need to get your scissors and glue. While you're doing that, I'm going to show you a couple of, I'm going to show you these photos, but in color so you can see them a little bit better. So, that's not where I want to be. All right, so if you need to pause, go ahead. But this is a picture of dates. Dates are a fruit, and it's a crop that was that's grown in the Indus River Valley. And so a crop is grown by farmers. And once the crops were grown and harvested or taken from their plants, put in baskets or other containers, they were sent to someone like Sanjay's father, who was a grain trader. So he wouldn't have traded these. These were fruits, but maybe something like wheat. So those are a couple of jobs we saw in the read aloud today. So what I'd like you to do is, with your scissors, you're going to cut out this smaller picture of these dates to remind us that the early Indian civilization did have a variety of jobs, including what we read about, which were farmers who grew the grain and grew the dates, and people who sold those products, those crops. So I want you to go ahead and cut this, and then you're going to glue it on here under jobs, because jobs is one component, one thing that makes up a civilization. Okay, and if I'm going too fast, you can pause the video. So another component of a civilization is that a civilization has cities, and we learned that Mohenjo-Daro was quite the city. We learned it where people live and work and trade. So since the ancient early Indian civilization had the cities, that's why it could be classified as a city. So we're going to go back to our paper, and we're going to cut out this picture here of Mohenjo-Daro, and we're going to put it on our chart to show that the ancient Indian civilization did have cities, which is why we can call it a civilization. So we're going to glue that one on. That's a sticky piece of glue right there. That's all right. So we've got cities and we've got jobs that are part of this civilization. Another thing we saw, and again, pause whenever you need to, another component we saw was an example of writing. This shows an example of early writing from the Indus River Valley civilization. And because there was an example of writing, there's writing, we're going to add writing, or this photo here, or picture here of the example of the writing. We're going to cut that out and we're going to put it under writing to show that the ancient Indian civilization indeed had writing, and it also is a component of civilizations. So go ahead and cut that out, and we're going to glue it. Be careful while you're gluing it, you're paying attention. This is an example of writing in this civilization. And we're going to get to the rest of these in the next couple of read alouds, but because I have met second graders before, I would like us to go ahead and cut these out and glue them on so we don't lose them. So go ahead and cut out these last 3 images, and then I'll tell you where we're going to glue them. And then tomorrow and Thursday we will discuss these components of the civilization. So if you get those 3 cut out nice and neat and carefully, we are going to add these in these positions here. So we've got religion, we're going to put these 2 here, and then leaders are going to put here. So again, if you need to pause, you can get caught up. Go right ahead. But I'd like you to get all 6 of these glued in so we can talk about them. Go ahead and pause and get caught up with us.